Hello everyone. Today we're going to be talking about sodium regulation in the kidneys and the different ways that we can achieve that. First, let's talk about blood pressure and GFR. So as we know, blood pressure, when it decreases, GFR is going to decrease. And let's talk about this a little bit. When we decrease blood pressure, we want to increase volume, blood volume, so that we can increase the blood pressure back up, right? How can we achieve that? Well, if you want to increase the blood volume, that means that you want to have the urine more concentrated, less volume in the urine. So you're going to decrease GFR, which is glomerular filtration rate, like we have talked about before. So if we decrease GFR, we're gonna have less volumes, less water, etc. in the urine, and we're going to increase blood volume. We're also going to decrease sodium excretion. That makes sense, because if we increase sodium excretion, we're going to increase water in the urine, because water goes along with the sodium, and we don't want that. We want to keep the water inside of the blood, I guess. So that's one way you can think about it. The next thing is aldosterone. We know that aldosterone increases sodium reabsorption in the distal tubules and collecting duct. How? Well, we have those sodium channels, and they're going to be more open, right? So that we can increase the amount of sodium we have not in the tubules, but inside of the blood, right? And that's going to bring water along with it, because we're increasing the osmotic pressure. We increase water, and we regulate sodium. We increase the blood volume. That's one way. Because we know aldosterone is going to help us increase blood pressure, right? So this is one way that it does that. And then angiotensin II, also think about it, it's going to help us increase blood pressure. That's why we give, ARBs and, angiotensin blockers, etc. when somebody has high blood pressure. So angiotensin II is going to increase filtration, but decrease renal plasma flow. What does that mean? Okay, well, angiotensin II constricts the afferent and efferent arterioles going to and away from the glomerulus, right? So we are increasing filtration by, when we constrict the efferent arterioles, we increase filtration, but we're decreasing renal blood plasma flow, because why? We are also constricting the afferent arterioles, those arterioles going to the kidney or to the glomerulus. We are increasing aldosterone also. So angiotensin II was going to increase aldosterone. I feel like here we go. Angiotensin II is going to increase aldosterone. And, as we said, that's going to go back to this part where we're going to increase sodium reabsorption, water reabsorption, etc. But, focus on aldosterone is going to, increase those sodium channels in the distal tubule and convoluted tubule. So at that end part. Okay, the next step, it's going to be atrial natriuretic protein. I'm getting out of breath. Okay, so this protein is going to be released when the atria senses increased blood volume. So that's happening when we have increased blood pressure, right? Increased blood volume, we're going to have that atrial stretch. Then we're going to release that atrial natriuretic protein. And what does that do? That vasodilates. So we're separate from this stuff. This stuff is going to be vasoconstrict, right? Or it's going to try to increase the blood pressure back up. This stuff is going to try to decrease that blood pressure, right? So we're increasing vasodilation, we're decreasing that blood pressure. By vasodilating, we are increasing GFR and increasing sodium excretion, because again, we want to decrease that blood volume. So we increase sodium excretion, water is going to come out into the tubules as well with it. We're decreasing aldosterone. That's important, right? Because we said increasing aldosterone over here is going to increase blood volume and blood pressure. in this case, decreasing aldosterone, now we're gonna decrease blood pressure. That makes sense. So like we said, increasing that sodium excretion is going to decrease that blood pressure by cGMP mediated channels. My finger's in the way. Maybe I should just zoom in. And what are we doing there? We're actually cGMP mediated. Oh, we're trying to remember, like, what are we doing? We're closing those sodium channels we were talking about before, right? In the distal tubule and convoluted tubule, collecting duct. And we're closing those sodium channels so that we are excreting more sodium, right? And then the next one is protein osmotic pressure. So we decrease the protein osmotic pressure. We're going to increase sodium excretion. Not much to say about that. We're talking about the renal nerves now. Like we said, if you want to increase your blood pressure, you're going to, well, when you have your sympathetic nervous system is, you know, in high gear, you're going to increase your blood pressure, right? So renal nerves, when the sympathetic nervous system is going, we're going to increase GFR and thereby increase sodium reabsorption, because as we discussed earlier, sodium reabsorption and more sodium in your blood is going to increase water retention, and it's going to increase the blood volume, increasing the blood pressure. Does that make sense? This little note here, I just wanted to mention that when you divert more blood to the cortical nephrons, you're going to be more, these are the nephrons that are located more in the cortex of the kidney, you're going to be salt wasting. And when you divert blood towards the juxtaglomerular nephrons, you're going to be salt sparing. It's just a little note I made for myself there. The next point I want to talk about is pressure natriuresis and diuresis. And literally, this is the definition. An increased sodium and water excretion caused by an increase in arterial pressure, but keeping GFR and renal blood flow the same. Okay, so what that means is that we have basically we have a renal blood pressure curve. Okay, kind of looks like, it's kind of hard to imagine. Something like, you know, there's a, you know, we're operating at this blood pressure normally, right? Well, we're going to, at a higher blood pressure, we're going to maybe be operating, you know, at this level. We're not going to be increasing GFR or, you know, changing either GFR or renal blood flow to maintain that sodium and water excretion. That's basically what that means. We're going to keep those the same. But usually when we have, like, and this is for, like, you know, prolonged hypertension, when we have, like, you know, just something like a small increase in blood pressure, like a, you know, when you have, like, sympathetic nervous system activated, then you are gonna have a GFR and renal blood flow change. But with, you know, chronic hypertension, something like that, like a change in blood pressure that is sustained, then you are not gonna be changing these. That's basically what that means.